So it's good to be here, good to be in church. I'm glad every single one of you are here. It's here tonight. And I do really want the Lord to do whatever He wants to do. And I'm anxious to see what he wants to do. I want to let Him do whatever that is. At least for me, that's what I want. And I hope everybody feels the same way. And let's just try to listen to what the Lord has for us tonight. And so let's pray. Let's pray the Lord will have a good service. Pray the Lord will help me to deliver this message that He's given me. I hope that I can do that tonight. And I want to be able to deliver the message. It's up to the Holy Spirit to take it and do with it whatever He sees fit to do. And He's the one that's going to do something in your heart or my heart if there's anything going to be done here tonight. But I want to be able to tell you what He's told me and shown me tonight. So pray for me. Help me. The Lord will help me to do that. I pray for all of y'all. Get your minds and hearts on the Lord tonight. And let's just see what He'll do. Let's all try to pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come to You in Jesus' name, Lord, and I'm thankful, Lord, to be in Your house, Lord. And Lord, I pray that You help me now, Lord, just to calm down, Lord, and relax and let You do, Lord. I've done what I can do, Lord, but it's up to You now. It's in Your hands. If You'll just help me, Lord, to deliver whatever message You want to say tonight, Lord. It's going to have to be You, Lord, I know, and I pray that You do that tonight for Jesus' name's sake, Lord, not because I don't want You to do it, Lord, for me to look good. I don't want You to do it, Lord, for that reason, Lord. I want You to do it, Lord, because I want the message that You have for these kids and for all of us here tonight, Lord, to be able to get out there, Lord, and work in our hearts, Lord. And I pray each one, Lord, open their heart up tonight, Lord, and let You do something for them, Lord. Everybody's here for a reason tonight, Lord. And I don't believe it's by accident that any one of us are here tonight. And I pray that You'd do something, Lord, in our hearts tonight, Lord. I thank You for Your word. I thank You that Your word is what's going to do the work, Lord, not my words, but Your words, Lord, and Your Spirit, Lord, is what's going to do the work in somebody's heart. And I'm thankful for that. Bless us now. Help us to sing, Lord. Help us, Lord, for a few minutes to let the cares of this world aside. We might look to You and look at You and see what You're doing and how You're blessing and helping, Lord. And I'm just thankful for these things, Lord. I'm thankful for You. I'm thankful for Jesus Christ. And I pray that You'd use these things tonight, Lord, for Your glory. Lord, not for my glory, but for Your glory. I pray for the kids that are here, Lord, tonight, Lord. I pray that the Holy Spirit would just go by and speak to them and touch them and talk to their hearts, Lord, tonight, Lord. Lord, we can't do it here in the church. You're not here, but You're not limited to that, Lord. You're not bound by the walls of this church, Lord. You have free reign to go and seek and find and get whoever You want to, Lord. And I pray that You would, Lord, for those that aren't here. Bless them as well, Lord. Watch over them, Lord, I pray. Watch over all of our kids, Lord. And I pray protect them from the devil. Protect them from this world. Protect them from the things around them. And Lord, most of all, Lord, help them to see You and see where their help can come from, Lord. Lord, it's in Jesus' name I pray tonight, Lord, and ask You to bless us now. Help us to sing. In Jesus' name. Amen. Let's turn first to 128. 128. We'll sing that one. I've already had one request that we'll sing after that, and then maybe if somebody has another one that they want to hear tonight, then we'll do that too. been asked for tonight. We'll sing that one and then maybe one other one.
I mean, 6, 6, 5.
6, 5? What is that one?
Six, 65.
Okay, well, how's it go? How's the smell go?
I don't know.
I don't think that's the one you're thinking about, really. You know,
67.
67? Oh. Is it 67, you think? It is. All right, let's say
Which
67.
one is it? Why do you like this one?
I don't know.
I just wanted to call it number.
I think so. We'll sing 67. Let's sing 67.
I have found a friend in Jesus.
can't, I thought she was saying, I love you, brother. Something like that.
You should know better than that.
149.
Thank
your Bibles, go ahead and turn to the chapter, or the book of Judges, like the 7th book of the Old Testament, towards the front of your Bible. Judges, chapter 13. Well, we talked a lot about the children of Israel and how they were in captivity in Egypt, and Moses led them out of captivity, and how all the miracles, the plagues, and all those things, and how they wandered in the desert for 40 years with God providing the manna and taking care of them, and eventually they made it into the promised land. Joshua led them into the promised land, the land that God had promised them, the land of milk and honey, the land that was going to be their, it was their heritage, whatever you call it. It was their home. It was going to be their home as a nation and as a people. And so they got there, but after Joshua died, there came a time where, at the time, they were the tribes of the children of Israel. They were literally the families that had grown and grown and grown of these children of Israel. And so they were like a group of tribes, and they spread out. God had told them where to go, what land was theirs, and what part of Canaan was theirs. And they all kind of spread out and had their own place, and so they lived together. It wasn't like you think of a tribe, like a tribe of Indians being just, a handful of, these were tens of thousands of people, but they were all of the same family. And so they spread out, and they each one kind of they dwelt together, each one ruling themselves as a tribe, but all together they were still kind of the children of Israel, but they didn't really have any kind of government over everybody. It was just every tribe for itself, you might want to say. Of course, they were all trying to follow God, and for the most part, trying to follow the Bible. But they went through a period which is what we're going to talk about right now. They went through this period of maybe 400 or 500 years, where before they actually became the nation of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, the king, before this, in this time in between the time they got into the promised land and the time that they actually became the nation of Israel, they were in this thing that some people called the Dark Ages of Israel. It was because they'd be doing what God said to do. They'd try to follow God. They'd trust God. They'd do all the things that God said to do. But then, and they'd go through a time of prosperity and peace. They go through this time, and then they'd start. It seems sometimes like if you don't have some kind of hardship, then you start to look away from God. Things get too easy. You start looking at yourself. You start looking at the things that you want to do, and it's not, I don't want to do what God said to do. Let's do this. And so they would start to fall away from God, from the God that had done everything for them, but they still started to go away from that. And then God would let them be taken captive by an outside nation. Some of these nations, Assyria and the Philistines and others, would come in and take them over. And so then they would spend some time in captivity as like slaves to these other nations. And then God would send somebody who was a leader, a person that would come in, and most of the time it was a military leader or of one of the tribes, and he would rise up and lead the people, and they would eventually overthrow these captors that had come in and taken them over. They'd overthrow them. And so then they would go back to being grateful for what God had delivered them, and they're back to being happy again and following God. But this happened over and over again. It happened, then they would go through another while, some years where everything was good, and then they would start to fall away again from God. So it was a cycle that they were in. And during one of these times, after they had been conquered by the Philistines and had been under the Philistines for 40 years, there came along, God sent one of the judges. They were called judges, these men that would come along and unite all the tribes together. They weren't really judges like we think of, like judges in a courthouse, but that's what they called them. They were judges, but they were basically a leader who would rise up from one of the tribes and lead all the people, all the tribes together. And so God raised up Samson. So I want to look at Samson here and his life. And let's look at Judges chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. I'll read first. And it says, "And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren, and bare not. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman, and said unto her, Behold now, thou art barren, and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive, and bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink not wine, nor strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive, and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines." So, an angel came and said to this family, this husband and wife, and said, "Hey, you have never been able to have a son, but you're going to have a son, and he is going to be called out to serve God, okay? And he's going to lead the children of Israel out from under the Philistines." And so, this angel was saying, the angel of God was saying, I'm going to ordain Samson. He's going to come and he's going to lead the children of Israel out from under captivity again. And he said that, I think it says down here, maybe somewhere later, yeah, it says, "For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death." Most of the Nazarites were a special kind of a group of believers, if you want to call it that. They're a special group of people who committed their life to God. It was kind of like you think of maybe a nun or something in a convent. They committed their life to God, to serving God. Most of the time it was for some kind of purpose, and most of the time it was just for a certain period of time. And during this time they couldn't cut their hair, they couldn't eat anything that was unclean, there were several rules they had to live by, that God said for them to live by, but it was for the purpose of them to serve God for a particular reason. And after that, after they served that time for whatever that purpose was, then they would go back to, they could cut their hair again, but during this time, they were not to cut their hair, not to eat anything unclean, not to drink, and they're also not to touch any dead bodies, which is another thing, another part of the story which we won't get into tonight, but they're also not supposed to touch a dead body. If they did, even by accident, there was a process they had to go through and make sacrifice. They had to cut their hair, for one thing, shave their head, like start all over again. Do some sacrifices, and then start back over again, as though they had never, already started. So anyway, but that's what God's saying that Samson was going to be, not just for some certain period of time. He said his whole life, from the womb to his death, he's going to be a Nazarite, which means God had a purpose for his whole life, not just for a certain period of time. He had a purpose for his whole life, and so that's what his family found out. Let's read chapter 13, verse 24 and 25 real quick. It said, "And the woman bare a son, and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him at times in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. So, he was born as God had said, and it says, and you get the idea that as he grew, the Lord blessed him, and he began to, it said, move between the camps. So he was actually a warrior. He was a fighter. He was fighting, moving between the camps as they fought. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him at times in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshcol. So this is how he started out his, let's say his, I don't know what you want to call it, his earthly, his ministry or whatever, you know what I mean? God had called him, and he's going to be a leader, and he becomes a leader here among the children of Israel. On the spiritual side, God had put a calling in his heart and on his life. On the fleshly side, which we all have, of course, we all know, we all deal with our flesh all the time. And so on the spiritual side, he's called of God, he's got a purpose, he's got something that God has told him to do and has given him what he needs to do it. On the fleshly side, he's got a weakness for women, okay, which, you know, anybody that's a guy might say, well, don't we all have weaknesses for women? I mean, that's pretty much a normal thing for a guy. But this was different, and really, and honestly, in this case, it's not so much that it matters in this case, and what I'm trying to get across to you, that it was a woman. I mean, he just had something that was his downfall, his sin that was going to take him away from God. It just happens that his was women. But over and over in the Bible we see that the devil does use women, has to get to men and to bring them down. I mean, the very first Adam and Eve, you know, the serpent used Eve to get Adam to sin, and so it's not that it's untrue. You know, it is true. It does happen. I'm just saying it's not. My point is not that women are bad and men are good. You know, that's not the kind of thing I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that was his particular thing that became his downfall. And God's law for Israel was that he didn't want them to marry outside of Israel. He wanted to keep their people, they were a chosen people. He wanted to keep them pure. He wanted to keep them all serving God. He knew all the other nations around them served other gods, served false gods. And it wasn't, you know, God said, I don't want you to go out and marry a Philistine, for example. It wasn't because God had anything against the Philistines, but he knew that as soon as they started marrying into the other tribes around them, or the other nations around them, then they would start to intermingle their gods in with their own God. And so God was protecting them by saying, absolutely do not go outside of Israel to find a wife. But that's what Samson decided to do. He found a Philistine woman and decided he liked her and he wanted to marry her. So he came home and he told his family, I want to marry her. And so he married her, and that's when he started to have really big problems with the Philistines. Because of his Philistine wife, he ended up getting into an argument with a whole bunch of Philistines, this group of Philistines. He got into a big argument with them, and he ended up killing 30 other Philistines to pay the debt that he owed these guys. Well, they all got mad that he killed 30 Philistines, and so they killed his wife and his father. They burned him to death. And of course, then he was mad about that, and he went back and killed this bunch of Philistines that he was first dealing with. He killed all them. And so something that started out as small as him saying, okay, I know this is God said don't do this. I know God said don't go outside of Israel to look for a woman or a wife. But that's what I wanted to do. So it started out small like that, of him just thinking, okay, this is just something I want to do. But I mean, I like this woman, and what's wrong with that? You know, I mean, he saw it as just I'm not hurting anybody, I just wanna do what I wanna do, that's what I wanna do. And you see how that snowballed into such a huge, huge thing. Samson, the biggest problem here is Samson decided, I'm gonna do what I wanna do, not what God wants me to do. I'm gonna do what I wanna do, not what God has told me to do. And Samson was blinded by the lust of the things that he wanted. I mean, all he could see was, this is what I want, and he didn't see the consequences of it, he didn't see ahead, and he didn't think, he just thought, what's wrong with that? This is what I want. He came, told his parents, hey, I want to marry this girl. They said, no, you can't do that. Didn't the law say we're not supposed to do that? And he said, yeah, but this is what I want to do. This is what I want. So the Philistines were now really mad. I mean, because now he has killed a bunch of people. Now, it doesn't tell us in here, Samson, you'll see as we go through and learn about Samson, one of the things that God did for him was give him incredible strength. It doesn't say anywhere in there that he was a huge guy. As a matter of fact, some of the things I was reading about, it said he probably wasn't a huge guy because later on, some of the Philistines are trying to figure out where does he get his strength. I mean, if he was like an Incredible Hulk, if he was a huge guy, then they would have said, well, that's why he's so strong, because he's got such big muscles. But so apparently he may not have been that big of a guy, but God had gave him incredible strength. And so the fact that he's already gone out by himself and killed 30 guys one time and then a bunch of other guys another time by himself, you expect that by then people are starting to say, hey, this guy's, be careful of this guy, he's really strong, or he's, dangerous. And so the Philistines were now, and plus he was like a leader among the tribes of Israel. He was like one of the ones, so it wasn't like he was just some, street guy or vagabond or whatever. I mean, this was a big guy in the children of Israel by now. He was a leader. And so that was really a big slap in the face to the Philistines. They're like, you can't have this guy. It'd be like, somebody, a big name person going and doing something that everybody found out about, and they're like, we have to do something about this. So they went to some of the children of Israel, and they threatened them, and they said, hey, you bring him to us. You better bring him to us. And so the children of Israel, I think they were probably afraid of the Philistines, and they said, okay, well, let's go get Samson, and we're going to give him this, because we don't want trouble with the Philistines. Let's go get Samson and turn him over to the Philistines. And so 3,000 men, so that tells you what they thought about him. It wasn't like he was just, it's like, okay, if you had to go try to catch bare-handed Iron Man or whatever from, you wouldn't go by yourself, or you and your buddy wouldn't go. I mean, they knew it was going to be a huge fight. So they took 3,000 men, and they went to him, and they found him, and they said, Samson, we're going to have to turn you over to the Philistines. And he said, and you get the impression reading it that he was kind of like, all right, I'll go, but I don't want you, I know they want to kill me, but I don't want y'all to kill me. Y'all just tie me up and give me to them. Let them do it. So, I think he probably could have said, I'm not going, and they might not have done anything about it. But he said, okay, tie me up. Y'all just don't kill me. Just tie me up, take me to them. And so that's what they did. They tied him up really good, and they took him to the camp of the Philistines and said, here he is, now we okay now? Y'all not mad at us anymore? And they left, probably ran to make sure. And so let's read what happened in chapter 15, verses 14 and 15. Chapter 15, verse 14. And it says, and when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his hands loosed from off the bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. So the children of Israel brought him into the camp. You know what a jawbone, you've seen probably the jawbone of like this bone right here with the teeth on it, of a donkey. And so they brought him into this camp. The Holy Spirit came upon him. He tore open his bands, the things they had tied him with. He looked down, there was a jawbone of a donkey there on the ground. He picked it up and killed 1,000 people with it. Okay, so this pretty much, finished the day for the Philistines. They were done, and I think they probably just gave up any chance or any hope of ever defeating Samson, or even probably the Israelites, at least for that time. In verse 20, it says, and he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. So it says this is what happened. He defeated 1,000 people. And then it just tells you that, and from there on, he was the judge of Israel for 20 years. So we can assume that the Philistines backed off. They're like, we don't want any more of this guy. They backed off for 20 years. There was peace. There was no battles. So there were no other battles mentioned. No other problems with the Philistines mentioned. And so it could have gone on like that, but once again, the same weakness that Samson had came back around, and that was women, like I said. And so let's read chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. It says, "Then went Samson to Gaza, and saw there an harlot, and went in unto her. And it was told the Gazites, saying, Samson is come hither. And they compassed him in, and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, In the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. And Samson lay till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city, and the 2 posts, and went away with them, bar and all, and put them upon his shoulders, and carried him up to the top of a hill that is before Hebron." So Samson, now, like I said, his weakness overcame him. He goes back to the Philistines, he shouldn't have gone there. It doesn't matter so much that the prostitute it would have been wrong to go to one in Israel.